Hi, Claudia here from Create with Claudia. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're making a table runner, and I call this the Swirling Leaves table runner. And here's one version of it. You can see it's like little leaves. In this version of it, each leaf, which is this section here, is a different fabric. So it's a true scrappy table runner. I'm going to show you a little bit of a different version when I show you how to make the blocks for it. It's an easy table runner to make. It's lots of fun, and I think it looks really cute for autumn. Of course, you could easily change up any of these colors and make this for any season or any holiday that you wanted. You can find this pattern and a photo tutorial on my website, www.createwithclaudia.com. And I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. I always love new subscribers. And lastly, I am on social media at Create with Claudia. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and very rarely I'm on TikTok just for a little bit of fun. So go check those out too. So thanks so much for watching and enjoy the video. Okay, so at the introduction to this tutorial, I showed you this table runner. This is the first version I did, and this is a very scrappy look. And so what we need to do first is we need to make the blocks. And one block is like this section here. Hopefully you can see it. And then, of course, you have this corn, sort of autumn corn border on it. So let's get started. I'll show you, or excuse me, I will tell you what fabric we're going to need. For the background, and in my case the background is this really light beige, almost white fabric. I actually have a couple different fabrics in there. This is truly a scrap quilt. I like to use up scraps that I have before I cut into new fabric. But anyway, that's the background is this white or off-white colored. So for the background fabric, you're going to need a total for this table runner of 1/2 yard. So 1/2 yard of background fabric. Now for the leaves, you can do it so many different ways. I'm going to show you how to do one block with all of the same leaf color, and the leaves are these darker swatches of fabric right here. If you're going to do one block all of the same leaf color, you need about 1/8 of a yard, and that is very generous. So like I said, these are all scrappy pieces that I just got out of my scrap bin. You probably need about 1 yard, I would guess, about fabric. That's not exact. If you were doing all of these leaves in one color, maybe all this sort of rust color like this, and they were all that color, you'd need about 1 yard of the fabric. So for scraps totaling about 1 yard. It's hard to tell you how many exactly when we're doing a scrap quilt like this, but each square, when you cut it, you're going to need 3¼ inches of fabric, so that might help guide you as well. Now for the border fabric, which is in this case this corn, hopefully you can see it here, this autumn corn pattern, you'll need 1/4 yard for the whole quilt, and that goes around the whole, that's a 2½ inch border around the whole table runner. And lastly, I just used this old fabric I had for the backing. You're going to need about 3/4 of a yard. That should be more than enough, and that goes for the batting as well. This does have batting in it. And now I'm going to tell you what you need to cut. So before I show you what to cut, this is the block that we're going to be making today, and that table runner is made up of 8 of these blocks. In this case today, each one of my blocks is going to have a different fabric, but unlike the scrappy one, within each block the fabric stays the same. So for the cutting for one table runner, and the table runners measure 20 by 36, you're going to need the following, and I'm going to leave that there. Of the background fabric, you're going to need, and I'm going to apologize up front, if you don't like half square triangles, this probably is not the pattern for you. There are a lot of half square triangles in this, so put on your favorite podcast or playlist and get ready to trim a lot of half square triangles. But for the background fabric, you're going to need to cut 64 squares cut 3¼ inches. So for the background, 64 squares cut 3¼ inches. For each leaf, you'll need a square cut 3¼ inches. Now, if you're making each block the same color like this one is, you're going to need 8 of those per block. So 8 squares. Now, if you're making you can do the math. That's actually, if you go to my website, that the math is actually done for you for each of the different scenarios. But all in total, for the leaf color, no matter what fabric, you're going to need 64 squares cut 3 1/4 inches. And then you need to get, and I need to pull that out, the border fabric. So for the border fabric, you're going to need 2 strips, cut the following: 32.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So they're pretty long strips. So you're going to need a long, when I said that you need a 1/4 yard for the border, you don't want a fat quarter for this, you want the full 1/4 yard, because you're going to need 32.5 inches by 2.5 inches for the long borders. And then for the shorter strips, you're going to need 2 strips cut 2.5 inches by 20.5 inches. Okay, so that's for your borders. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to make the half square triangle units. That's one of these right in here. And as I said before, just get ready, you have a lot to make. If you know how to make a half square triangle, this process should be really easy for you, and I will tell you, you can go ahead and jump ahead and do that. You will be trimming down the half square triangles once they're ready to be trimmed down to 2.5 inches. So each one of these, before it's sewn, each half square triangle is 2.5 inches. So if you want to skip this part, go right ahead, and then I'll show you how to assemble the whole block. But if you're hanging around, I'll show you how to make a half square triangle. They're very easy. They're my favorite quilting unit. They're not everybody's favorite unit, but I know that too. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to pair up one of the leaf squares with one of your background squares. And you're going to, on the back of this background square, you're going to draw a diagonal line. Whoops, let's leave that off. From corner to corner. And this is a nice water air soluble pen. It just sort of disappears after a while. And then you're going to match up your fabric. So you're going to take your leaf fabric, put it on the bottom. Now you might have a dark background, I don't know, but whichever one's the lighter one is basically what you want to draw your line on. You're going to line them up right sides facing. So you can see this has a little bit of a shimmer on it. I'll put that right sides facing towards the leaf fabric. Okay. And then you're going to line those up nice and evenly, and then you're going to sew down a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you want to use that throughout this whole project, is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to sew down each side of that drawn line a 1/4 inch, and I will do that, and I will be right back. Okay, so here it is. I've sewn down each line. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. I know I always use beige thread, and so I apologize. Maybe you'll see it better. You can see this would be the drawn line in the middle. Just use your imagination, and there you can see my seams going down each end. And now what we want to do is take our rotary cutter and quilter's ruler and split that in half. Okay, so these have been split in half, and then you're going to press them open, and there you have a half square triangle. So when I come back after I press these, we're going to trim them down to 2.5 inches square. Alrighty, so here they are, nice and pressed, and now we're going to trim it down to 2.5 inches. And for this I use this ruler. It's one of my favorite rulers. It has this nice diagonal line printed on it, and that's what I use to line up with that diagonal line, and that really helps you get a nice even half square triangle. And because we're getting 2.5 inches, we're looking for that 2.5 inch, let me see if I can point this out better. You're looking for that 2.5 inch point just up there. That'll form that square for you. So the first thing I do, my first cut, I don't want to do the 2.5 inches yet because I want to leave enough wiggle room in case I mess up. So I just sort of even it up. The first cut is even up along this diagonal line. And then I'm just going to trim off the one corner. Okay, see, and that gives you that nice sharp corner, and that'll be your starting point to really measure that 2.5 inches from. And here's where you're going to find that 2.5. It's this intersection of where it matches here and over to here. And you're going to put that corner right on the corner that you just cut. And then you want to line up that diagonal line with that diagonal line, and then each of this line, the bottom line, and the left line as best as you can, and then you're ready to cut. And there you have it. There is how you make a half square triangle. So for one block, you're going to need 16 half square triangles, and there are 8 blocks in this table runner, so in total you're going to need 128 half square triangles. Whatever color combination you're going to do, but if you're doing each block in its own individual leaf color, you need 16 per block. Okay? So now we can lay out this block and get it sewn together, and I already made a bunch of these in a different color scheme just to save some time. Alright, so here we go. Now we're going to lay these out. And I usually have my pattern, or I'm going to use this block as my guide. It's really easy to get this layout sort of twisted around. And it's really easy when you're sewing also to mix it up a little bit. All right, so here we go. Here is the block ready to sew together. It's very easy once you've laid it out to sew it together, although I will say it's very, very easy to get one of these twisted around if you're not careful. So I suggest I sewed each block together separately. Like I would work on this one by itself, that way I wouldn't mix up any pieces. But that's how you do it. You're going to sew they're divided into rows. You're going to sew this row together first, this row, and this row, and then you sew each individual row together to form the block. Like I said, easy sewing, but you do have to pay some attention to it. Okay, so now you can see where I've sewn the rows together, and individual rows together, excuse me, and now I'm going to sew these together like that, and this block will be done, and then we can assemble the whole table runner. Okay, so here's our block. It's all done, our swirling, autumn leaves, and they sort of look like it. See how sort of that forms that little bit of a circle. So that's in these sort of corn fabric here. Just show you one more that I did. That was the one I showed you earlier. When it's at this stage, it should measure about 8.5 inches square. Hopefully you use that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Might be off a little bit, but you're shooting for a 8.25 inch 8.5 inch size block, this size. Now we're going to go ahead and sew together the inside of that table runner. Okay, so you can see now where I've laid out the 8 blocks, and what I'm going to do next is sew those 8 blocks together. I like the layout the way I did it. I have some different hues of brown there, so I think they work well together. So when I come back, you'll see the whole center part of the table runner put together, and then I'll show you how to add the borders. Okay, so you can see where it's all sewn together, and now I've laid out the long borders and the short borders, so I'm ready to sew those on, and then we'll be ready to quilt the whole table runner together. Now, one important step here when you're adding the borders, add the long ones first. My measurements are so that the measurements that are in the pattern that I gave you here are so that you add the long ones first and then add the short ones on the top and the bottom. Okay, so you can see now where I've added all the borders, and now I'm ready to quilt it. And what I'm going to do first is lay that big backing piece on a flat surface. I'm going to lay that with the wrong side facing up. Then I'm going to put my batting in it. I have sort of a low loft batting that I'm using this time around. I like that for my tablecloths. And then I will put this top on it, on top with the right side facing up, and that's my little quilt sandwich, and then I'll quilt it. Now the way I'm going to quilt it, I'm going to just quilt it lengthwise in the ditch. This is a very quick and easy quilt job. So basically, again, lengthwise in the ditch, and I should be good to go, and then I'll add my binding. So when I come back, you'll see the finished product. Okay, I'm back with the finished and quilted table runner. Here it is. You can see all of my different blocks in there. I did the 8 different blocks. So that's this version, and I'm going to show you one more time the one I showed you at the beginning, which is truly scrappy. And on this one, every single leaf is a different fabric. I mean, there are a couple repeats, but they're scattered throughout. So that's this one. So I love the way this one turned out. It's just a great size table runner, great for fall. Again, you can easily change up these colors, red and green for Christmas, pastels for Easter, any season, any holiday, whatever you want to do on this. It's just a fun pattern. It's easy. It is a lot of half square triangles, but that's okay. So I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I really love new subscribers. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm also on social media at Create with Claudia. And again, this pattern is available also on my website as well as a photo tutorial, www.createwithclaudia.com. It's hard to say. So thanks so much for watching and have a great day.